Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Blangiforti. I'm a retired detective squad commander with the NYPD. Spent 20 years with them, most of the time doing investigations. And I just want to welcome everybody to my first podcast. The name of it is Truth, Investigations, and Criminal Behavior. And we're going to delve into a number of subjects in this podcast. First of all, I've worked with some of the finest detectives in the whole world. NYPD there's a reason they're called the finest, and the detectives, there's a reason that they're called the greatest. During the course of the podcast and its episodes, you're going to hear me interview some of those greatest detectives in the world, talk about some of their noteworthy cases, investigative steps that they took, and how they arrived to the proof that the perpetrator committed the crime. It's all very fascinating stuff. We're also going to discuss what happens, all of that. The arrest is made, they're prosecuted. Now what? We take an analysis of the criminal behavior, and we're going to talk a little bit about what makes bad people do what they do. So I'm going to take you from the crime scene to the evidence, the subsequent investigation, the interviews, interrogations, the arrest, and the prosecutions. It's all going to be in this podcast, but also some of the things that are missed crime to crime are the victims in all of it, and, what certain crime affects them. So there's a human aspect, and I think we're going to delve into that as well. And we're going to take a look at criminal behavior, a full analysis of the criminal mind. So the first episode today is going to be the Gilgo Beach Serial Murders. Why am I starting with that? A couple of reasons. Number one, I live on Long Island, not too far from Gilgo. Number one. Number two, the guy who they caught, Rex Heuermann, lived about 3-4 short minutes from where I live. So Massapequa was known for being a terrific suburban Long Island community, one of the safest anywhere, but, outside of the occasional serial killer. So I want to start with that. And also I did a 7-part series on the Gilgo Beach serial murders back in 12 years ago. And I interviewed the police commissioner at the time, Richard Dormer, who came under tremendous fire during his time of this investigation. I interviewed the then chief of detectives, Dominick Varrone, as well, about investigative steps and everything that had to do with this particular case, why the detectives did what the detectives do. And anyway, so if you're interested in this content and a lot more, I'm going to delve into a lot of subjects, school shootings and active shooters, old homicides, new noteworthy homicides, both solved and unsolved. We're going to talk to victims' families, to just provide you a human aspect to every single crime. So it's going to be very good. And if you're a true crime enthusiast, you want to learn a little bit more, this is the podcast to follow. And we got it all over the place. It's on Apple and Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And go to my YouTube channel with Truth, Investigations, and Criminal Behavior. Go to the Playlists tab. You click on the playlists, and you'll see the 7-part series. If it's something that interests you, it was from 12 years ago with those interviews I told you about with the police commissioner and the chief of detectives. So check it out. A lot of people did. So, all right. Here we go. What started this whole case was a young lady named Shannon Gilbert. Shannon was a sex worker. She was from New York City. And also you'll see that how her case differs from the others. Hers started with a 911 call. She was frantically talking with the 911 operator, and she was on the phone for 20 minutes with the 911 operator, talking about that she was running and she was in the marsh, and she had a whole conversation with the 911 operator. But the people that were part of her getting there and getting out and running was her driver. His name was Michael Pack. So he drove her to the location The person who had made the arrangements with her was a gentleman by the name of Joseph Brewer, who's since been cleared of any involvement with it. But Shannon ran from his house, called 911, and from her since. He recovered her remains in December of 2010, along with the remains of 4 other women. We'll get into those folks who were called the Gilgo Four a little bit later in the podcast. Shannon is found, and it sparked the rest of the investigation. Shannon is found. 4 other people are found, all as a result of Shannon Gilbert. So let me ask you all a question. How long ago do you think Rex Uerman is alleged to take a victim that he was tied into and arrested for? So how long ago do you think Rex Uerman allegedly committed a homicide that he is now charged for today? So let's talk about the first victim, who was murdered in 1993, 30 years ago. Wow. And that's the first victim that he's been tied into and arrested for. And the way her body was found was consistent with all of the Gilgo victims. And remember her name, that it goes back 30 years, and that through DNA and the advances in DNA from the times that these victims were killed to present, it's both cleared people that didn't commit a crime and convicted people that have. So DNA transformed law enforcement in the way that we do investigations. So the next victim is named Karen Vergata, and Karen, her body was found wrapped in plastic in Fire Island, and then her skull was found off of Ocean Parkway at Gilgo Beach. And she went disappearing in 1996, and her body wasn't discovered until 2011. So you can imagine the pain that puts a family through, just simply not knowing, but she was identified this many years later. Now, the next victim is a young lady by the name of Valerie Mack. Valerie disappeared sometime in 2000. And November of 2000, dismembered torso, arms, legs, and were found bound and severed. Also in Manorville, the same place that Sandra Castillo was found. So there's a commonality there. And the other commonality is Rex Uerman was charged in both of these homicides. Another identified victim, Jessica Taylor, her torso with the head and the hands missing were found in July of 23. Also in Manorville. And other remains, her skull, her hands, her forearm, matching her, were found near Gilgo. So we're seeing a nexus between Manorville and Gilgo. All these victims were found in the same way, with the exception of the male that was found. The male was found bludgeoned to death, and with the male remains was a female dress. So the theory is that Uerman engaged this male through the escort service, and the thought is that Rex Uerman engaged the services of this man, and Rex Uerman thought that the man was a woman. So it's believed that the theory, at least, is that because Uerman, allegedly, he hasn't been tied into this crime, but we believe the possibility that the body looked different was the perpetrator became enraged to the point of that they weren't strangled like the other victims. He was bludgeoned to death. We think that was a rage killing. And the theory is it was probably Uerman with a blunt instrument. So just an interesting fact. The Gilgo Beach four victims, that young ladies, sex workers. So we see the commonality in all of this. Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, Amber Lynn Costello, and Maureen Bernard Barnes. Also, all victims, all young, all petite escorts. They were all on Craigslist. They were found in close proximity to each other. All of the victims were also found in burlap bags and victims of asphyxiation, strangulation. Now, Rex Uerman, besides living like 5 minutes from my house, which is pretty scary, live in a pretty safe area. Who knew that a serial killer would live a few minutes away? So, a few interesting things about Rex Uerman. First of all, he was an architect. And as an architect, his house, and if you haven't seen pictures of it, just throw it into Google and you'll see this dilapidated ranch-style house with old red shingles, just in a complete state of disrepair. So it's questionable why an architect who you would think makes good money would live in a house that looked like that. So that's an interesting discovery to see that he lived in such conditions. Another interesting thing is that at the execution of the search warrant, they found 90 guns in his basement. I don't even know if I've shot 90 guns in my lifetime, and I have a law enforcement background, you know. So, yeah, but 90 guns, both long and guns and automatic weapons, revolvers. They found everything in the basement of this house. The other thing that's interesting is they looked at his Google searches and things like that, and everything was consistent with the mindset of this. He was looking into sadomasochism and ways to dispose of bodies, and things that are telltale signs that maybe he's the bad guy. It's funny, telltale signs are always seem to be there with people that would commit heinous crimes. These warning signs psychologically, how they're acting, how they live, are all warning signs that something isn't right, and cops, detectives, anybody who's retired knows that we look at everything. We're very skeptical. We're very intelligent in terms of conducting an investigation, reading people, sitting, doing interviews with victims, interrogations with the bad guys, how we get from one part to the next, to the next, to the next. Now, the case was cold for many years until Rodney Harrison, who became the police commissioner of Suffolk County, along with Ray Tierney, the district attorney of Suffolk County. The case was opened again, and that's what led to Uerman's arrest. And it's still pending. It hasn't gone to trial yet. We haven't seen any hearings, and the body count is piling up. One thing that, and I'm not saying that they're done with this case, because I don't think they are. Uerman traveled to different states, North Carolina, Nevada, Pennsylvania, just to name a couple. I believe, I could be wrong, but there's other victims out there. It's not just confined to Long Island. How would we know if they were buried in the same way and wrapped in burlap? Well, those states and those local municipalities would have to check their missing persons logs, right? Any missing persons reports of young women, and take a look. Has the body been found? And maybe open up a case on that. Where was this person last? Would the case, anything that came out of the report that the young lady went missing? So things like that. They haven't found anything yet in the places that Rex Uerman frequented, but I believe that there's other bodies out there. Maybe in New York, maybe in Long Island, maybe in another state. We don't know. Again, the oldest victim that he's been tied into is over 30 years ago. Then it's something that I believe, other detectives believe. He also drove. Sometimes I'm baffled that he wasn't caught earlier. There were such telltale signs about him, and also particularly an interview with two males and a female that turned out to be one of the victims, that he was described as being very, very tall, scary tall, and driving a pickup / SUV. It turned out to be a Chevy Avalanche. He had this big green Chevy Avalanche, and it fit that description. I'm sure there's a lot of people that fit that description, and that's one of the challenges for law enforcement and investigation. You want to get as much information as possible on every case, but that simply doesn't happen. And now you have a serial killer who slipped through the cracks for a while, but finally brought to justice by terrific detectives, investigators, and the district attorney did a terrific job as well on this case. Everybody working collaboratively did a good job on this case. It's also why I want everybody to take a look at, again, go to YouTube, click on playlists, and you'll see the 7 series episodes that I interviewed then Commissioner Dormer, who was technically in charge of Suffolk County Police Department and its investigators at the time. I also interviewed Dominick Varrone, who was the chief of detectives at the time that they were doing the investigations on the Gilgo serial murders. You'll get insights into their mindset from the first phone call that, Commissioner, we have a problem, essentially, to all the way through when their case went cold. Still investigating, but cases stop every once in a while and aren't revisited. Gilgo wasn't revisited until 2023. So the many years that went by that not much of the investigation was taking place. You'll also see in the interviews that at one time during the investigation, the detectives thought that the perpetrator could be someone from law enforcement because of the location of the bodies, how meticulously they were thrown into the marshland, wrapped in burlap sacks, and just not being seen. None of them, any of them. So, but the detectives did a tremendous job in this case overall, especially when the case reopened in 2023. And that's when the DNA was identified, Ewerman, and it started getting tied into the Gilgo bodies. But the one thing not just me, but many people have wondered about is how did he get away with this for so many years? He has very distinctive physical traits, character traits. He drove this big Chevy Avalanche, which was in the descriptions given with one of the victims. But thankfully and eventually he's caught. The case is still ongoing. Again, my belief is there's more bodies out there. What will they find? He's not talking, so we're not going to know from him. And I'm sure that he doesn't really care about families getting closure, especially being that one of the victims, he actually called the family from the victims' cell phones and was taunting them over the phone about their relative. So you talk about sick in the head, he falls into that category. But there's so much on Gilgo over the years. And if you go back from the inception of the case, going back to Shannon Gilbert, leading to the rest of the victims being found, if you go through the case from its inception all the way to catching Ewerman, you find out, there's so many fascinating things. And when you look at the 7-part series, you'll see comments from people that had their own theories and comments on what I said during those interviews. But I hope that this provided some perspective, and it's really just the tip of the iceberg. But I hope this provided some perspective for you on the Gilgo Beach serial murders from inception to the arrest of the perpetrator. Take a look at it. Take a look at the episodes. Do some research on Gilgo. There's not enough time in a podcast to go through every single aspect of this investigation. So I just want to recap what we've been talking about with Gilgo, the victims, and the timeline, and Rex Ewerman. So we go back to 1993. Sandra Castillo was found. She was 28 years old. And she was found in North Sea, Long Island, which is all the way north of Southampton, in November 93. Now, Rex Ewerman was charged with her homicide in June of 24. So we see the amount of time that transpired and what appears to be one of Ewerman's earlier victims. And she was strangled to death. There's Karen Ann Vergata. She was 34. In April of 96, her legs were found wrapped in plastic at Davis Park in Fire Island. And in April of 2011, her skull was found at Gilgo. Now in 2000, Valerie Mack, hunters discovered a black plastic bag in Manorville, and it contained Valerie's dismembered torso. Arms and legs were bound and severed. Now, in April of 2011, her skull, her hands, and her right foot were found at Gilgo. Okay, Ewerman was charged in her homicide. Then we have Jessica Taylor. Her torso was also found in Manorville. Her skull, her hands, and her forearms, however, were found at Gilgo. So her torso was found in Manorville, skull, hands, and forearm at Gilgo. Ewerman also charged in Jessica's homicide as well. Then there's the Gilgo Four. Melissa Bartholomew, 24, went missing in July of 2009. Her remains are found in December of 2010 at Gilgo. Now, this is the case where Ewerman obviously used, it was him that obviously used her cell phone. What he did, like I said, was sick. He made taunting, sexually explicit calls to Melissa's younger sister. So it just goes to the mindset of Ewerman. Next was Megan Waterman, 22 years old. Now, look at the timeline on her. She goes missing in June of 2010, and her remains are found at Gilgo in December of 2010, so very close apart. And again, Ewerman's charged with her homicide. Then we have Amber Lynn Costello, went missing in September 2010, found in December 2010. Her remains are also found at Gilgo. Now, with her case, we have witnesses that saw Ewerman, a tall, heavy guy, dark-colored pickup truck, and his cell phone records and forensic evidence is what links him to this case of Amber Lynn Costello, and he's charged with it. Now, the last of the Gilgo Four is Maureen Brainard Barnes. She's the only exception that Ewerman hasn't been charged with her homicide yet, but obviously is the prime suspect. But they don't have they don't have everything on him yet to charge him with this homicide. So it's important to note also that the bodies are wrapped in burlap. They're young, petite escorts. They advertised on Craigslist. So they died from suffocation, strangulation. So all of these homicides have the same MO, and everything. All paths lead to Rex Ewerman, and he's charged with allegedly committing these homicides that we just spoke about. So these victims will always be remembered. There's something else that I think we should put out there, is that it's important to recognize that they are victims. You can feel however you want to feel about people that are sex workers or prostitutes or whatever they choose to do. That's not exactly what you may consider moral. However, they're still victims, number one. Number two, they left behind families. Some of them left behind children. So it's important to recognize that they are victims, same as anyone is a victim of a crime. I'm going to post the topic on social media, so you'll be able to see what episode 2 is all about. And it's going to air a week from today, November 8th, next Saturday. So check it out as well. It'll be a different topic. And again, I'll post it, so you'll find out about it when I put it up over the next couple of days. Hey, listen, thanks for listening to me today. I hope you find the content is going to be fascinating, educational, and definitely how investigators are consistently trying to find the truth. There's a saying, you probably heard of it, the truth is out there. Well, the truth is out there, and it's up to the detectives, investigators to find out the truth. I mean, that's what investigations are all about. And then why did they do the crime that they did? That gets into the criminal behavior part of the podcast. So it's been a pleasure to be with you today. Hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll look forward to seeing everybody in a week. Take care.